Okay, thank you everybody for coming. My name is Lieutenant Jacob Morris with the Lorain Police Department. As most of you know, we called this press conference yesterday. We began to investigate a death or several deaths that went pretty viral pretty quickly, understandably so. Chief McCann, as his term as chief here, has focused on being clear and accountable to the public. With that being said, keeping our public informed is something that we believe is very important, but we also understand the sensitivity of a lot of the things that we deal with. As such, we're here at this press conference today to discuss the incident that happened yesterday, which is currently still under investigation. So I'm going to apologize in advance if there are some questions that I may not be able to answer due to the sensitivity of the investigation. However, again, Chief McCann, the Lorain Police Department, our goal here is to try to be as informative and transparent to our public as possible. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and begin. Again, we will open this up for questions afterwards. Some that may not be able to be answered, we won't be able to answer, but those that can, we will. We want to begin on behalf of Chief McCann and the Lorain Police Department to express our sincerest thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the families that are dealing with loss, that are dealing with the losses connected to this incident, as well as to our community who are also hurting. It's a very emotional incident, and as we get into the details, I believe we'll all understand why. But again, it's important that our public understands that we as police officers are here for them, and we do understand the emotional pull here. With respect to the incident happened yesterday, Sunday, November 19th, 2023. Officers were contacted by a neighbor with respect to a couple of loose dogs that were running around the area of Broadway Avenue here in Lorain and East 9th Street. The neighbor understood that the dogs resided, or their owners resided, at the apartment in the upstairs of 129 East 9th Street here in Lorain. That is a split-level single building, and the upstairs is its own residence. Just about 10 o'clock in the morning, officers were contacted with respect to the loose dogs, and they responded, locating the residence and understanding that the residence has an initial exterior door that leads to the two different entry doors of the two different residences. Upon going in, conducting a property check, they noticed that the upstairs residence door was open, and at the entryway of the upstairs apartment, it was immediately apparent to them that they observed a 29-year-old male, later identified as Tyler Young, deceased on the ground in the living room with a gunshot wound to his head. Next to Mr. Young's body was a 9mm pistol, Taurus firearm, which was also recovered later. Upon clearing the rest of the the residence to make sure that there weren't anybody else inside that maybe needed help, officers were immediately confronted with the body of Skylar Young, 24-year-old female, and her 4-month-old son, Bandon Young. Both were immediately, it was evident that both had perished. Both had gunshot wounds and had been deceased for some time prior to the officer's arrival. A further check of the residence would lead officers to discover the body of Angel Isaac, 9-year-old daughter of Skylar. It was also evident that she had been deceased long prior to officers' arrival. At this time, the Lorain Police Department Detective Bureau and the Lorain County Coroner's Office were contacted to begin an investigation into this matter. The investigation is still ongoing, though the facts and evidence are currently leading the Lorain Police Department to determine this to be a murder-suicide committed by Tyler Young. Again, this is still under investigation. We're not making a final ruling on this. However, the preliminary investigation or the initial investigation would lead us to suspect this as being the case. This is important for us to, I guess, present to the public because it's apparent that we're not looking for anybody else. There's not a suspect out there at this time that we're looking for in connection with this. Nor are there witnesses. At this time, this is a joint operation between the Lorain Police Department's Detective Bureau and the Lorain County Coroner's Office. Unfortunately, we did have to wait in order to notify, we did have to wait prior to holding a press conference and returning a lot of your calls. I know that there was no shortage of concern, but this is an emotional matter, it's a sensitive matter, and we wanted to ensure that the victims' families were all properly notified. At this time, there is a total of 4 deceased. We did recover a total of 3 firearms from the resident. However, the 9mm Taurus handgun that was recovered next to Tyler's remains is the firearm that we suspect was used. At this time, I can open it up for questioning. That is exactly where we're at right now is with the information being presented. I'm sure that you have some questions. Some I may or may not be able to answer, but we will take questions. Yes, ma'am.
Any known history of domestic violence or any other police responses to this issue?
So yes, for those that maybe couldn't hear, the question was there any known history of domestic violence or prior police responses to this location? The answer to that question is yes, there were. Earlier this year, in May of 2023, police did respond to a location near this residence, business parking lot, made contact with Skylar with respect to a domestic violence and a strangulation, actually, that had occurred between her and Tyler Young. Upon arrival, officers did make contact with her. She explained that there were both verbal threats made and physical harm. I believe she stated that she was slapped and choked. Therefore, Mr. Young was charged actually that night with the Ohio Revised Code statute for strangulation and domestic violence. At the time, Ms. Young was 26 weeks pregnant with Bandon. Police were not able to locate Mr. Young, Tyler, on that date. However, 4 days later, he was taken into custody and charged. Yes, ma'am?
Can you tell us the relation between Tyler Young and Skylar Isaac?
Skylar Isaac is Skylar Young. That's a maiden name, previous history, yes.
Are they married?
They were currently married, yes.
They're currently married, okay.
Has Mr. Young had any other incidents with Lorain Police?
He has a criminal history with the Lorain Police Department. As far as domestic violence goes in his adult years, again, he's 29 years old. As far as domestic violence goes in his adult years, he was only arrested for the domestic violence that occurred in May of this year.
Can you give us the proper spelling of the 4 deceased?
Yes. Skylar Young, the mother, is Skylar. Young, the last name Yong. Angel Isaac, the 9-year-old, is Angelisaac. Bandon Young, the 4-month-old, is spelled Bandin, last name Young, same as Skylar. And Tyler Young is Tyler, again, Young.
Whatever came of the domestic violence regulation, I know it's working its way through the courts, was it finished with the courts?
So the domestic violence, once we as the Lorain Police Department make an arrest in a situation like that, which we did in this situation, it goes through the court processes. The case, you'll find, if you know, just by doing a public records check, was not true billed or no billed at the Lorain County Grand Jury because of its being a felony due to the strangulation and her being pregnant at the time of the occurrence. That goes over to the county court. So he was arrested locally, all right, charged and booked. The report was made, and then it goes through the court system. At that time, when presented to the grand jury, it received a no bill, which means that it wasn't going to proceed past grand jury.
Is there a reason? Was Skylar helpful in this whole thing, or?
So
not?
yes, Skylar, I can't really comment on the exact reason. That would be something maybe more appropriate for a prosecutor or the courts themselves. I will say that on June 8th, so approximately a month after the arrest occurred, Ms. Young did come to the Lorain Police Department and ask to recant her statement. Also writing a victim statement. I believe she alleged that she didn't think that it occurred and that she may have had a flashback from a prior incident.
Lieutenant, when people hear about this, what do you want them to take away from it?
You know, it's always something that we explain to our officers that, you know, when the holiday seasons come, stress is a little bit higher, emotions are a little bit higher, and you know, as we see this more and more across the country, things like this, you know, the senseless violence, you know, we become outraged, we become upset, and I think a lot of it is because it seems like there's not a whole lot that we can do in a situation like this in response. It's just an investigation after the fact. So when you hear about things like this as a law enforcement officer, you hope that the people in our public understand that there are resources out there. There are things and services that are available that if you think you're getting to that point, or if you see somebody that's getting to that kind of a point where you feel like maybe some intervention is necessary, we really do, even as police and as emergency services, work together to rely on each other to hopefully curb things like this. And sometimes you can't. But in the same respect, as officers, we hope to get out to our public that there is help out there. You're never truly at the end of your rope, and that there's always a way to improve your life, so to speak.
Do you see an increase in these kinds of cases around all this?
So yeah, we do see increases in things like domestics and other incidents because of the fact that, you know, again, money's typically tighter. All right, I certainly have a family, and I know that a lot more of my paycheck goes towards presents and food and you know, decorations, things like that can, you know, create stress that wasn't there maybe in August. So we do notice that there are some stressors that are present during the holiday season. We make sure that our officers know that, our supervisors certainly do. Chief McCann makes sure that we're ahead of things that we can forecast. And we can't always forecast when or where it's going to happen, but we can certainly look at the trends and see that, hey, maybe now is the right time for a little bit of, you know, roll call training or something along those lines that help us be a little more proactive.
How are the officers that haven't covered this emergency? Are they off today?
So the officers are off today. You know, we make sure that they're aware of mental health services that are available. They all seem to be doing well. But again, you know, obviously looks can be deceiving. Chief McCann made sure that we're able to reach out to these officers and provide any support to them that they may need, even sometimes when they don't know that they need it. There are some steps that have been taken to make sure that the officers, who are human beings, by the way, and may not even understand the effects of something like this until much, much later, we're proactively, as the Lorain Police Department, taking steps to ensure that their emotional well-being is accounted for.
Lieutenant, a 4-month-old and a 9-year-old were shot and killed. How's that sound?
I mean, it's terrible. Look, I'm a father. I'm a Lorainite, and obviously an officer. And in one sense, you know, as a police officer, it can sometimes, you know, make you feel like, you know, your job is important because you go into some scenes that normal people, quote unquote, shouldn't have to see. You don't realize sometimes as officers, you know, now at my stage as a lieutenant, I'm typically not the one that's walking through these doors, but I start to realize how scenes like this and things like this can affect human beings. And in some situations, I have a sense to reflect on this and think to myself, you know, we really do. Our guys and gals that are out there on the road right now in the Lorain Police Department are doing a job that's often thankless, and the wounds or the battle scars that they get from these jobs aren't always because of a high-speed chase, right? As I think about, the families that mourn, it affects me. I think about, wanting to do more for them and wanting to do more for everyone that may be involved here. And most importantly, I think about what can I do today. I know that Chief McCann and I often converse about this. What can we do to try to affect this so that no one else ever has to go through this again? Because aside from the reactive stages of our job, there is a proactive side that I think he's invested heavily in, and again, it just makes you want to get to the drawing board and say, how can we make this never happen again, and really rack your brain to be a service to the community.
At this point, do we have any idea of when the actual crime occurred?
We don't have a specific, but we believe that it happened sometime between 1 a.m. and obviously 10:04 a.m. when we arrived at the scene. That was due to the animals at large.
Did he leave a note or any indication?
So we have nothing like that. There was no note found or any kind of indication.
And did anyone report the sounds of gunshots?
No, ma'am.
Was Angel a Lorain public school student?
She wasn't a Lorain public school student. However, she was a student of one of our local charter schools. They have also been notified. We're working with them as well, with that school system.
Can you just touch base on what his criminal history was?
So he's obviously has the prior arrest for domestic, though it was not true billed. So it kind of depends on he's got prior activity with us. He doesn't quite have a record because that was not true billed. So we can as police officers understand that we have reasonable suspicion, I suppose, to believe that he may be prone towards violence. However, he hasn't been convicted of that. I guess that's the important summary. So when you talk about prior record, that won't be on his official record of conviction, though it's certainly documented. Ma'am, you had a question?
Is mental health considered a factor or addiction or anything?
Excuse me?
Mental health issues or addiction considered a factor?
Yeah, so we're still investigating that, but we do have some suspicion or beliefs that mental health played a part in this. I think it's, without stating the obvious, of course, I believe that there may have been some diagnoses from previous cases that were mentioned and conveyed to the police department.
Are you able to share what those were?
So a family member had explained that he had a schizophrenic episode back in May during that initial domestic violence incident, and that's from the police report. Now, whether or not that has been diagnosed, I couldn't comment. I don't have his actual medical records, but I can tell you that a family member reported that, and that's one thing that we have access to. So if there's no, okay.
I'm wondering, given that you all had contact with the family prior to everything happening, when you go back in your head, is there anything that could have been done, that the police could have done to save his family?
No, and I'll tell you, that's something that we will be our harshest critics about, though it's, as somewhat an outsider, again, I'm a lieutenant, I'm not out there like the officers are, and I can understand that if I were out there, I may be prone to think that because I'm a human being too, right? You rack your brain to think about what you could have done or may have done differently. But the truth is, as a supervisor and somebody that's not quite intimately connected to the case itself, I can understand that there was absolutely nothing that the officers could have done to prevent this. There's nothing that we could have seen. Even with the prior incident that had occurred, I'd like to take an opportunity just to introduce a couple, Alex Luth and Jill Soda Vasquez, here with Lorain County Safe Harbor and Genesis House. We work closely with them to try to affect things like this proactively. We talk constantly to try to offer services. There are services such as men's anti-violence program that can sometimes have, court involvement as far as people taking part in that. We have the Genesis House. We have places for people to go, and we have services to be able to help people through times like this and really curb and prevent a lot of these violent events from happening. But at the end of the day, we understand that this is a familial issue sometimes. there are things that happen within four walls that we can't always affect. And I just don't know that while we always try to do the best we can, and while we always go back to the chalkboard to critique what we've done and think about how we can be better, it wouldn't be fair, and certainly in this situation, to I guess, Monday morning quarterback and say, we could have done this. There was really nothing that those officers could have done. Yes, sir.
Any reasoning as to why the door was left unsecured and why the dogs were out?
So, no, we don't have the specific reason. You know, unfortunately, some questions may not be ever answered, right? This is a difficult situation. We just don't know why. But you know, thankfully it was, and we were able to go in and provide at least closure.
Thank you.
Thank you all.